Happy Reformation Day. Or if you're a papist, Happy All Saints' Day Eve. Or if you're a heathen, Happy Halloween. And if you're anything else, Happy October 31st. It's cold here in Louisiana. And again, I'm C.W. Johnson Jr., and it's cold here in Louisiana. Overcast, as you can probably tell. My face is not yellow like it was on the last video I did like this. And perhaps I might go back to that video and put a different filter on it, just because looking at my yellow face can be kind of distracting. Well, this is the 500th anniversary of the day Martin Luther went and knocked on the door at Wittenberg Church in Wittenberg, Germany, and said, in a manner of speaking, "Trick or treat." And his treats were 95 theses, and he basically changed the course of history. And he didn't set out to change the course of history. He was just a punk. The Pope thought he was a punk, but he was just a monk who saw that things were wrong, and he set out to actually reform the church, and not actually separate from the church. He just wanted to point out some wrongs that he saw with the church, like how the poor weren't being taken care of properly by the church, and that more money was being spent on indulgences and things like that, and building that cathedral in Vatican City, things rather than being spent on the poor. Actually, a lot of his 95 Theses actually have to do with caring for the poor, even though the Reformation is mainly known about theology about Christ's atonement and being saved by works, not grace. A lot of the being saved reformers are all about being saved by grace and not by works. And so Scriptura, the solas, the five solas, grace alone, faith alone, in Christ alone. Even though what the Reformation is known about theology, a lot of the 95 Theses actually have to do with social justice and helping with the poor, which is a very interesting fact and very important day in history, basically one of the most important dates in history, because a lot of the freedoms we now enjoy today are a result of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King is actually named after Martin Luther. Martin Luther standing up for what he believed in. And the freedoms America is kind of a result of the Reformation, because a lot of the reformed groups, like the Puritans and the Pilgrims, came to America fleeing religious persecution that only occurred because of the Reformation. And so it's a very important day in history. And I was thinking about doing a video in honor of Reformation Day about John G. Patton, the king of the cannibals, missionary hero, the New Hebrides. Probably be pitching the book King of the Cannibals, the story of John G. Patton, missionary to the New Hebrides, by Jim Cromartie from Solid Ground Books. Even though I do know there is a movie in the works based upon the life of John G. Patton, I would still like to do a video on it, just to encourage the filmmakers and help them to get a larger audience for this incredible story of this man who faced incredible odds and incredible hardship and heartache to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to the unsaved, unreached peoples of the New Hebrides. And if you really want to dig deeper into his life, you can see Missionary Patriarch, the story of John G. Patton, evangelist for Christ among the South Seas cannibals. This was actually his autobiography, and he goes into a lot about all the ways the Europeans are mistreating the Aborigines and the people of the South Seas. So it's a very fascinating book. Definitely make a great movie. I'll put the IMDb page to the movie they're trying to make out of him, about his life. I'll put it down in the description area below. Some other missionary stories I've actually wanted to do a lot more Christian history and missionary stories. I have done William Cowper. I've done Athanasius, pitched their stories as movies. Some other stories, missionary stories, would be To the Golden Sword, The Life of Adoniram Judson by Courtney Anderson. You see a well-read edition here. I actually have his autobiography and his journals in my book collection at home. I did not think about bringing them today, but that's one missionary story I'd like to do a pitch video about. That's Adoniram Judson's life definitely needs to be a movie. He faced a lot of hardships and had a lot of heartache bringing the gospel to the unreached people of Burma, or Myanmar as it's now known today. Incredible story about the faithfulness of Christ and how he was able to overcome many hardships, and very challenging, very gritty story to read. Not very pretty at times, very heartbreaking. So I definitely want to do a lot more stories about missionaries and about Christian history. Here's another one, The Life and Diary of David Brainerd, edited by Jonathan Edwards, with a biographical sketch of the life and works of Jonathan Edwards by Philip E. Howard Jr. That's definitely what I want to do. Kind of a depressing story. He was a missionary to the Indians, died very young, single, died of tuberculosis because he spent a lot of time out praying in the snow for the salvation of the Indians. In fact, his brother actually had greater success as a missionary among the Native Americans than David Brainerd did. And as you can tell, I did not name his brother Mr. Brainerd. We'll call him Mr. Brainerd. He's not as famous as his brother. Remarkable story about David Brainerd. He overcame depression and guilt and was greatly used by Christ among the Native Americans, but his brother was used greater. But no one knows his name. And there's a lot of missionaries who were used greatly by Christ in winning the unreached people groups into the fold of God, and yet no one knows their names. And that's why we need missionary biographies. Definitely another missionary we need to do a movie about is David Brainerd. Not David Brainerd. Definitely need to do a movie about David Brainerd, but David Livingstone. Here's one book that would be a good theme: The Daring Heart of David Livingstone, Exile, African Slavery, and the Publicity Stunt That Saved Millions by J. Milbrandt. It's about his fight in the African slave trade in Africa, and how he, even though he was kind of considered a failed missionary, how he basically was one of the greatest social justice warriors. I don't really like that term, but he was a real social justice warrior in Africa, fighting against slavery where it really mattered. And basically, his life helped change the whole British policy towards slavery in Africa. Even though slavery was already abolished by England, yet it was still going on in Africa, and he got England involved in abolishing it there in Africa. So definitely amazing story. His whole life, he overcame a lot of hardships, a lot of heartbreak. He discovered a lot of things. A lot of the rivers in Africa he helped map because he was trying to provide routes for our missionaries to get into the heart of Africa. So his life definitely needs to be a movie. Very controversial, both among Christians and among secular people, whether he was a good guy or bad guy, but I think he was a good guy. Of course, John Calvin, he's a very controversial character. I think he's a good guy. But, I dated a Calvinist girl one time. I got burned. Well, his life definitely needs to be a movie. Definitely needs to show the other side of him, because he was very human like the rest of us. Now, this looks like an interesting movie. The Prince and the Preacher, Ben Franklin, George Whitefield, and the Surprising Friendship That Invented America by Randy Peterson. Looks like something Bleecker Street would do. Very interesting, sort of how these two incredible people in American history had a friendship and the religious aspect of it. Now, this one I've heard a lot of good things about. The Persecuted by Sergei Kornigov. Inflicting terror and suffering upon Russian Christians was his assignment, and he did his job well. Basically, it's like the Christian version of Equilibrium. He's going out in Soviet Russia, getting rid of religion because it causes war and pain, and basically he becomes religious at the end. So basically it's Christian Equilibrium going on there. And another one we should do is probably, I want to do a pitch video about, is God Planted 5 Seeds by Gene D.I. Johnson. No relation. Basically, it's about 5 missionaries who went to South America to win a tribe to Christ. a tribe to Christ, but they were massacred instead. And a lot of people don't know about it. People might think, well, that sounds like Jim Elliot. Oh, actually, it was 10 years before Jim Elliot, and they saying their story. But a lot of people don't know about it because it did not get the publicity that Jim Elliot, and Nate Saint got, because it happened during World War II. So the story definitely needs to be learned, definitely needs to be told, and more people need to find out about it. There's so many more Christian stories from Christian history, Christian heroes whose lives I'd like to do pitch videos on about how they need to be movies. What's his name? Not Paul Bunyan, John Bunyan. John Bunyan definitely needs a movie. I have his autobiography at my house, Grace Abounding to the Chief of Sinners. I could not find it, otherwise I would have it I'll be holding it up right now. But of course you can find it in, let me see if I have it. Let me see where it is. You can find a SparkNotes version of the life of John Bunyan, not Paul Bunyan. He's much more legendary than Paul Bunyan. In The Hidden Smile of God, The Fruit of Afflictions, and the lives of John Bunyan, William Cowper, and David Brainerd by John Piper. And you can also find a SparkNotes version of John Patton's life and Adoniram Judson too, in Filling Up the Afflictions of Christ, The Cost of Bringing the Gospel to the Nations, the lives of William Tyndale, John Patton, and Adoniram Judson by John Piper. William Tyndale actually has a movie already called God's Outlaw. If you haven't seen it, it's a very great movie. Definitely one of the better Christian movies out there. Definitely recommend it. At this point, I want to do pitch videos basically on the entire The Swans Are Not Silent series by John Piper. I got pretty much, I think I have the entire collection with me in my bookshelf at home. Well, or in my hands right now. And definitely a lot of great Christian heroes whose lives need to be preserved in film, and more Christians and the world needs to be reached by their stories. Definitely these guys, because they're missionaries and faced persecution and dealt with depression, which definitely in our day and age people needs to be talked about in the church, because it's not talked about as much as it should be. Excuse me, I need to get some water. It's been going on for about 12 minutes now. Thank you for bearing with me. Definitely these guys, William George Whitefield and C.S. Lewis, they definitely need movies. Again, Luther has a movie made out of him, but Augustine and Calvin definitely need movies made out of their lives. Now, William Force and Newton, they've had their movies made already, I think. I don't know about Charles Simon. I think there has been a autobiography about Charles Spurgeon, but George Muir, and he definitely needs a movie. Hudson Taylor has a movie already, but that one could definitely be remade. So all those guys definitely need biopics made out of them. I could really see Bethlehem or Desiring God becoming their own movie production company, like Sherwood down in Georgia. That would be very interesting to see what kind of movies they would make. Very interesting to see what kind of movies John MacArthur's church, Grace, out in California, would make. That would be interesting. Also be interesting to see what kind of movies the Gospel Coalition will make. Because they're always posting articles about how Christians should excel in art. So they should definitely try to do their own production company and make some movies too. Just do it! So stop publishing articles about how Christians should excel at art and start excelling at art yourselves. So that's definitely some future episodes, if that should be a movie I want to do. I apologize if you can't understand my voice right now, because I've been up all night guarding. So comment below with any other stories from Christian history, biopics of Christian heroes you would like to see, and which ones, excuse me, my voice is giving out, and which ones that I have pitched here already. Which of these pitches would you like to see as a full-length episode of That Should Be a Movie? So thank you very much for watching. I'm C.W. Johnson Jr. Please like, subscribe, and if you like this video, share.